What's up, Tito? How's it going, man?
Going great. Thanks for joining us. For those who don't know, Nick is our most prolific rep on the platform for years. So excited to have you here teaching us your secrets. I guess I'm curious, maybe before we get into the nitty-gritty of your secrets of pipeline in 2025, I'd love to just hear how you got into sales, how you got into DX, and yeah, tell us a little bit about the journey.
Yeah, happy to be here. Excited for this opportunity. I came into sales a bit non-traditional, I would say. I had a non-traditional path. Family is blue collar through and through, like general contractor, plumbing. I could plumb your whole house at 14. And so I didn't really see tech like on the radar for me. But growing up here in Utah, I got exposed to Silicon Slopes is what we call it, and saw some neighbors getting into tech. And that was my foray into the tech world and scene. And I started in marketing. I always had a knack for at least talking to people, and marketing seemed like a good area to get into tech. And it was that low barrier to entry in 2013. Just had to know some SEO, the SERP, whatnot. So I did that for about 12 years. And one of my mentors said, you should probably just go into sales, dude. I don't know what you're doing. Why won't you just actually go into sales? And from there, I took his advice and it's been off to the races a little over, I think I'm 18 months in kind of the sales IC role, and I've loved it ever since.
Wow, I had no idea you were only 18 months into the role. For background, if you ever check out Nick's LinkedIn, you will just see a string of 200% quota achievement. So how did you get to 200% quota achievement basically every single quarter if you've only 18 months in? What's your secret in sales?
Yeah, realistically, I think that marketing background helped a ton because when you think about marketing, it's selling without selling. And so I like to sit right in the middle of thinking, okay, I don't want to sell to this person. I want to help this person. I want to learn about their problem and learn a little bit more before I can actually help them instead of just hit my quota. And genuinely, that's been, I think, a really big differentiator on how I approach the sales flow as a whole. I always think about if I was in their shoes, what would I want to get? What type of emails would I want to get? What type of conversation would I want to have? And that's honestly been, I think, the biggest differentiator for me in terms of philosophy.
I love it. Well, it's probably a good transition into Koala. I know Koala was in place at DX when you first started your sales career. So maybe tell me a little bit about how you described Koala, and then especially right at the beginning as you were a new sales rep, how you used it.
Yeah. I think so. I was somewhere previous to DX, and I was just thinking about the problems that I was seeing in SDR, BDR land as a whole. There seemed to be a little bit of a bottleneck needing lists from people, trying to understand who was the hottest on that list that I should prioritize, right? I think a lot of orgs, you just get a list and it's either smile and dial or this is the list in your territory. Have at it, just try and start some connections and start from the ground up. And I realized in order to hit 200%, I really needed to hit the ground running faster. And what's the fastest way is looking at warm leads. And so, like day two, our director of business development mentioned we have this tool called Koala, which helps you see who's on your website. And for me, that was like alarm bells. That's what I need to know, who's hitting the site, who they are, what's going on, like what are they looking at on the site. And I was all in on Koala probably at the end of that first week. Okay, this is going to be my daily tool, North Star metrics, single pane of glass, like whatever you want to say. This is my companion for how I'm going to kick ass.
Amazing. I love this concept of getting into the shoes of your buyer. And I think as I've been on a sales journey, my background is in engineering and product, but as I've been on a sales journey as the CEO here at Koala, I think that's been my gravitational pull too of just, trying to get into kind of a value adds, almost a support mindset. I'd love to hear a little bit about what, getting into the shoes of your buyer looks like. And maybe more generally, you've talked to me in the past about really learning your ICP. I'd love to hear like what it means to get into the shoes of your buyer.
I think having intent data or just like visitor data, you could probably get that from a lot of different places, right? But really understanding what makes them tick, what they queried or searched to get to your website, what they're reading, their location data, like all of that is information that I can put into play when crafting my initial outreach. You guys do actually, and I don't want to just like clap for you guys, but your AI in terms of the email writing capability and like how fast your emails draft is like by far the best I've seen, Tito. So like just
Thank
hands
you. Thank you.
down, like straight up, you guys are doing really good at this. But yeah, being able to get into their mindset of, okay, I'm a director level and I'm looking at potentially how these companies are using AI, and I'm reading a case study from DX about that. And sure enough, I can start to see maybe a CPTO or a CIO or a head of AI. I can start seeing them visit our website and what they're reading and what they're looking at and how they reached our website. The search is really interesting because one of the best ways to break into an account is to talk about the problem, how they talk about it internally. And so I really like areas where you guys show, here's what they searched. They searched engineering productivity. And so I'll use that in the email. That goes in the subject line, that goes inside of the actual email itself, because if I can start to use and adopt their language, they start to open up, right? And talk to me like, oh, you actually do know the problem that I'm working on, and you're talking about it how we talk about it. And that really helps me get into kind of their mindset and their shoes, so to speak.
Yeah, I love it. Maybe one just slight tangent of a question, but into sort of marketing and sales. But I know you sell to incredibly technical buyers. I imagine it's mostly CTOs and very technical engineering leaders, and you're speaking their language in their words. And how did you get to know this buyer so well? And what does that process look like? I imagine it's another secret to your success.
Yeah, that's a fun one. It comes from a place of like genuine curiosity. And I think this is probably something you hear all the time, be curious. And I hate that I'm just spouting the same information here, but I hope there's one person that's listening to this or watching is like, okay, I actually should be genuinely curious about the problem they're having. A lot of times I think people come in with, hey, here's the problem I have, here's how I want to fix it, but they're not the problem experts. But I know the problem through and through because that's what we solve. So yeah, you just have to get curious and really understand. And that comes from just asking them, asking your teammates, watching calls. But that is realistically priority number two, onboarding any new SDRs is really understand your persona.
Cool. Love that. Maybe changing gears slightly, you've often described yourself almost as like a detective when you're in Koala and you're like figuring out some breadcrumbs and trying to put together a case. I'd love to hear just, a specific example or two of what kinds of things you like to piece together and maybe a mystery you solved that turned into an opportunity.
Yeah, my goal was to be like, I want to be the number one user of Koala at DX. And I quickly turned into that and turned into an internal advocate because of this kind of detective work that I could do inside of Koala. Often we find there's just a black box of information where it's like LinkedIn said someone was interested at this company, right? And then I'll go to Koala and say, let me look at this account. Okay, there's someone in this location, it's an executive level person, and they're looking at how to measure productivity. And so you guys surface it for me, most likely one of these two individuals. From there, it's really fun to then go to that person's LinkedIn, look at like their history, what are they commenting on? And the reason I knew it was him is because there was only one executive in this particular town that Koala had surfaced. And so even though he was anonymous, I knew exactly. And so it was a 2 sentence email that just goes out to this guy that says, hey, other VPs of AI are having this problem. Is that something you guys are experiencing as well? And sure enough, Sunday rolls around. He hits me back and says, yes, please, I would love to talk more about this. And so, yeah, just surfacing kind of all those areas where I can get triggered in one of my platforms. And I always go back to Koala to figure out who it was, what was going on, what were they looking at, what's their interest, and then I launch off from there.
I love it. You just mentioned something that's very interesting to me, and I think a lot of our customers struggle with this, which is yeah, translating sort of all of that Sherlock Holmes detective work into kind of the right message. And you said it beautifully, is you just sent a super simple, like 2 sentence email. Like tell us a little bit about, the messaging you're doing, how you're activating. Also, are you always using email, or what other channels are you working with? Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you take action on this, and yeah, how you make it so effective, what your response rates look like, et cetera.
Coming from marketing, I have a strong preference towards email. But what I do always keep in mind is if I was in their shoes, would I want to get this message? Would I want to get this phone call? Would I want to get this text or DM? My email response rate's around 20%. It's pretty
Wow.
crazy. Yeah. And that's because I always try and think, is this going to move the needle for this person? And that is my barometer for whether I send it or not. Now, I do have kind of a framework for how I always reach out. It's not mine. I'm going to credit Kevin Dorsey, KD. He's a beast, really knows what he's doing, but he uses the KPIC framework. That's an acronym. K is for no, P is for problem, I is for impact, and C is for CTA. So every time I write an email, DM, phone call, text, I always mentally figure out the no in KPIC. Let me let them know why I'm reaching out. What is the connection? Like, what was the trigger? I want to basically establish myself as a trustworthy person that's reaching out, earning that time a little bit. A little bit different than a permission-based opener, but the same. I just want to establish, hey, I have credibility here. Hey, I worked with so-and-so company. I talked with another VP of engineering, established credibility, basically. The P is that problem. Some companies have a different way of training. My biggest thing that I think about is problem agreement. I want to make sure that we can agree on the problem that my solution is trying to solve. So you have to agree that you have that problem. And it's not necessarily like a BANT question. I think there's all these different frameworks for what qualifies as an opportunity, but I just want to make sure that you even have this problem that I think we can maybe solve. And then CTA. This is, I varied from a lot of salespeople in that I do not push for meetings. I don't push for downloads. I don't push for them to do something that I want them to do. I want them to feel heard and understood, and I want them to feel like they're going to get value from this conversation. That email with the VP of AI, like that was the conversation. Hey, a lot of other VPs are trying to track this. Are you trying to track that? That was it. That's my CTA. And instead of pushing him to go for a meeting, he self-opted, like, yes, please, can we meet on this? So that's the mental framework I'm always going through when I reach out to these folks.
Amazing. Well, I'm curious, it sounds like you've really like settled in on a bunch of stuff that really works really quite well. Over the last 18 months, I'm curious if there are any things you tried, experiments you ran that didn't work, or you found just work, like an anti-pattern, or maybe someone told you to try this thing and you felt this doesn't work at all. Like, what are some of the things you tried that you're like, this thing is not it?
Voice notes and DMs like on LinkedIn, I'm not seeing that come back with any fruition. I think it's hard to get data out of a voice note. Could be fun for outreach, but it just didn't work for me. Maybe people hate my voice. I don't know. Could try
I think
different.
you have a nice voice.
Oh, thanks, Tito. Appreciate it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it wasn't working for me. People continue to try it. I think one of the things I'm always willing to do is try new ways of outreach, try new ways of closing. In the future of sales, you have to be willing to be experimental. It's always cyclical. What works here is not going to work at this point, but this is going to work in the future again, right? It's always once it works, everyone starts doing it, and then it doesn't work, but then you got to go back to it's always just going to go like this. So yeah, I think there's voice notes is the only thing I could think that I did not enjoy.
All right, fair enough. Well, on the same topic, are there other like signals you feel like really don't work, they're overrated, or other trends that you just are like, this is clearly not it? I feel like every day I'm on LinkedIn and there's 15 trends coming at me, and I never know which ones to try and which ones not to. Like, how do you sort through all of that noise?
Yeah, yeah. One of the trends or signals that I really hate is people know that they need signals, and so it just became like okay, what's the easiest signal we can grab? And I've got people in my inbox from 2 companies ago talking about it. Hey, you probably used this tool 2 companies ago. Do you want to bring it forward? So the signal of previous user at a new company is maybe the worst signal potentially ever.
Whoa, that is a very hot take.
Yeah, it is a hot take because, and this is more of like your reps individually. I don't think this is a leader issue, but like when we get AI and new tools, a lot of people just set it, forget it. Oh, it's all automated. I have all these things going, like doesn't matter, right? Regardless of the tool. And I think reps get lazy and they just figure AI is doing all of it for me. And so it's only because they're using it wrong, which is why I think it's not working well.
Yeah, I think it's actually been an interesting trend over the last couple of years too. I just feel more and more mentally overwhelmed, like each month that goes by with just the volume of emails, and some of them are like crafty and have some new hook or some new subject line or whatever that got me to open it. But yeah, the only ones I ever reply to are the ones that are speaking about some kind of problem or some kind of like yeah, some kind of pain that I'm feeling. And yeah, so I think it's all of the things you're saying are deeply true. And I feel like there's just like some new way of like wrapping it, whether it's a fancy subject line or hitting me on like 4 different channels at once or hitting me with a video
Yeah.
or whatever it is. Like there's a new flavor of the week. But if it's not actually talking about a very specific pain I have right at this moment, there's just like zero chance I'm going to reply.
And when they're in the moment, you just said it, right? If it's a problem that I'm having in the moment, then I'll respond. I think one of the things that we haven't covered yet is speed, like speed of onboarding. How fast can you start to understand your persona as well as like speed to reaching out to your leads? And Koala helps with both of those. I did get the fastest outbound and still hold the current record for fastest outbound at DX from a new hire. And that was in part due to Koala. I just saw some intent and I was able to quickly reach out. The first thing and the last thing I do every day is look at the intent because I need to understand who do I need to reach out because this is a problem they've got right now and it might not be a problem in 2 days. And that is like the number one thing I do is try and be fast with my outreach, and Koala definitely helps with that.
Amazing. Well, I know you've been promoted, so congratulations. And now you're onboarding new SDRs. What does that onboarding process look like other than maybe some of the tips around yeah, speed to lead and making sure that people are striking while the iron's hot? What else does the program look like?
I think I've kind of approached the onboarding a little bit different than some other BDR managers in that we've only ever talked about the problem, you and I today. You'll notice the thing I didn't talk about was our solution. And so what we do is focus on the problem and the persona and the pain and the industry and what we're trying to solve rather than how we solve it. Because can I really talk about your problem like I'm a peer? Do I deserve a seat at the table? Can I act like I really should have a voice in this conversation? I think by getting them really familiar with the problem, we can actually have them be a lot more effective because we can always layer on product knowledge as they continue to onboard and ramp and get more familiar and we launch more products. But they really need to have just the base level understanding of what the heck are we solving and how do you talk about this problem. And so, yeah, we don't talk about our product, how we solve it, and what's going on for the first few weeks. It's all about here's your tech stack, here's how to use your tools that you're given, and here's the problem and personas that we're dealing with. And that's what they do for the first couple of weeks. And it's been going really well.
Wow, I love it. All right, let's wrap up with a fun one. We asked a question in a survey of our sales reps. I think you participated in it. We basically asked how enthusiastic people were about the future of sales in our new AI forward landscape. And we were actually surprised. 89% of sellers responded that they were very enthusiastic about it, which I think was a lot less fear of the future than I was expecting. As a former software engineer, I'm a little bit worried about software engineering in the AI forward future. Obviously, a lot to be excited about as well, but it does feel like that job is going to change a ton. But I'd love to get your take on, yeah, why you're enthusiastic, what you're worried about, and what you think this future of sales looks like in a world where we have lots more AI every single day.
Yeah, I think we're enthusiastic because we have the tool that's going to help us continue to produce and move forward and be at the top of the leaderboard. I think that the top 10 or 20% of reps in the next 5 to 10 years are going to be masters of their tools. They're going to know it inside or out. They're going to basically be admin level privileged across any set of tool because I think that they realize that what AI does is help speed up bottlenecks. It doesn't necessarily replace us, but it does help me research an account faster, draft an email faster. It helps me onboard faster, right? That's at least 4 different people that would have helped me that I just mentioned. But now using tools, like it's up to me to produce and it's as fast as I can go. So I'm very enthusiastic. I think people are always going to have problems, right? The problems aren't going to go away. And what have we talked about today? It's way more about the problem than it is the solution. So that's something that's always going to be, I think, to sales advantage. And realistically, I'm very enthusiastic because now I just don't have to depend on a lot more people. I'd like to be doing, as much work as I can. And if I don't need an SDR or RevOps or someone helping me any step of the way, like that's just that much more revenue I can capture quicker. So
I love that thought of just you have all of these like assistants that you can send off into the world and do these things, and you're now even more in control of your own destiny. That makes a ton of sense.
yep. I've always wanted this level of insight and I finally have it. That's why I'm more enthusiastic. I can give them like a better experience, a better sales experience of I know you're probably going to want to know about this. And it's been a really exciting time for me. So I've loved it.
Amazing. I love it. All right. I think I'm done asking questions. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome having you, and I'm sure that our audience is going to learn a ton. If you want to get 200% to quota, listen to everything Nick says. Any parting words?
No, I appreciate what you guys are doing, man. You guys have been a big help. Yeah, hats off to you guys as well.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.